It's bad. Anime.
I'm John.
I'm Rob.
And this is Bad Anime, the show where we decide,
Wait a minute.
well, it's not that.
Well,
it's not.
okay, so
it's not an anime. Not an
I
anime
gave
today.
a little bit of context, but I have to give a little more.
We did a prerequisite episode to this one, just so you know.
Yes, which will probably... This is probably coming out the week after if we're smart, but I don't know. We might play with the order. Who knows? I don't
Oh, it's probably not. Fuck. Wait, actually, it might. It might, actually. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, good note. Good note. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget, actually.
Oh, you have a pen in hand. You're legitimately taking a note. This is amazing.
I do. I gotta make the distribution work because I think I planned for it, but I was also on vacation for 2 weeks, so I forgot everything. So
Well, there we go.
I'll take a look at it.
Anyway, yes, but we did...
Let's get going here. Let's get going.
We did
Let's
have a
ride.
What? I don't know what you said. Anyway.
What? Sorry.
Shit. Anyway, so the prerequisite for this was our episode on the first episode of Kamen Rider Black from 1987.
Yes.
Because I watched the first episode of what we're covering today, Kamen Rider Blacksun, and thought, okay, their idea of making a dark reimagining of Kamen Rider Black is throwing in a bunch of anime shit, including the bad CGI and the whole racism plot.
Yep.
So what I thought we were going to get with Kamen Rider Blacksun is a CGI-filled nightmare with a bunch of anime shit thrown in.
Yeah.
Delighted to say we got very little of either. Because
We did get very little of those things. We did see glimpses of them, but not very much.
I was so happy how little CGI was used. I mean, really wasn't expecting that. Even some scenes where you could get away with CGI, they just said, no, we're going to make a giant puppet creation king, and he's going to fight it.
And they fucking did. And they just did. And,
so I should touch.
why don't you start off here? Why don't you start? You're
here's the thing,
more
right?
so the expert, as we've kind of covered in our last episode. You're kind of more of the Kamen Rider virtuoso.
Virtuoso is actually kind of honestly isn't too applicable with Black itself, because I realized a couple things when rewatching this. Because
interesting,
Black, when I first got really into Rider stuff, this was back before Toei secured all their major distribution deals. So actually watching this stuff was very hard back in the day, because episodes would only be available very briefly before Toei would crack down on them across a host of video sharing sites. Right. So I've only probably seen the first couple episodes of Black and the last couple. So there's a lot of the middle of Black I didn't really see or even remember.
Wow.
The only reason I was so fond of RX because I was able to get a cheap knockoff DVD on eBay one time, and I watched that.
How long were the original series? About
probably 48 to 52 episodes apiece. One or two.
Oh, okay. That's lengthy. Okay.
Well, yeah, because especially with live action stuff back then, and still now somewhat. If 52 episodes, 52 to 48 is a normal lifespan. You basically want it to last the whole year.
Right.
And Kamen Rider Black is a very rare example where a rider gets a direct sequel. So Black and then Black RX were the two original series. The reason why why this thing got made, because right now, last year when this came out, we were in the middle of the big Kamen Rider 50th anniversary project.
Yes, and that came across because every episode it's at the forefront of the episode as the title card is like Kamen Rider 50th anniversary project. I'm like, cool.
No, the show's been going on for 50 years, and coincidentally, it would have been the 35th anniversary of Black itself.
Cool.
There was no racism stuff in the original Kamen Rider Black.
Oh, there wasn't. Okay, good.
No.
I was curious actually.
The whole Kaijin thing didn't exist in the original Black.
Okay, because we only watched the first episode of the original Black, but there were a lot of things in this that I was like, I'm pretty sure that this wasn't in that. The racism angle, which to be fair, I thought was good, a good plot point.
Which is one we've seen a lot of in shows just we covered alone.
Yes.
Devilman Crybaby is a big example. They had touches of it in fucking Kamikatsu, even Redo of Healer of all things.
Yep. All the a lot of animes really have kind of leaned into that racism angle, and I think a lot of it has to do with
current Japanese politics.
Exactly, Japanese politics, and that a lot of people in Japan don't exactly want foreigners in the country, or things like that. So I
what
think
I often say is a lot of people on the right, more right leaning in Japan, say they want people to visit. They don't want them to stay.
Exactly. Like, you can come, like, be a tourist, but if you get an apartment, like, sorry, we do not want you.
We're not a fan of you. No.
Yeah. Got to keep trying to keep Japan Japanese, I guess.
Which is crazy because I thought what I thought we were going to get was with the whole kaijins being an allegory. That dropped very quickly when we learned how their food source was created in the second episode.
Yes, we did.
But before we even get there, we should explain what's going on, because my first impressions of the first episode weren't particularly great, only because I thought it was so fanficky. Because it was so much darker than the original. And when we see Kotaro, he's like in his mid-40s shooting ketamine in himself. And I'm like...
Yeah, he's an old man. Yeah. I the direction that they went with this plot, having only seen the first episode of Kamen Rider Black, seems to be a large diversion.
Very much so.
Seems to be like they have the elements there. Like they have Kotaro, they have Nobiko.
Yep.
They have like the experimentation angle and stuff like that.
They have the three wizards of leading Gorgrom.
Yes,
they have a creation king.
They have like all the elements, but what they do with them seems drastically different. If I'm not off base. Let's not forget that
Kamen Rider Black is not the main character in the story.
Is Shadow Moon the main character in the Kamen Rider Black story?
Well, no, I'm saying like in the original Kamen Rider Black, obviously Kamen Rider Black's the main character.
Right.
In Black Sun, Kotaro's not the main character. This is Aoi's story.
Yes, it is Aoi's story.
Yes.
He is the like
title character.
He's like the guy, you know.
He's the cool dude who gets things done, but really this is Aoi's story, and it really gets highlighted at the end where I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
anyway.
When she builds her entire own rebellion camp to like help people and like destroy evil. I'm like, we'll get to there.
But we should get, because like her journey from where she starts to where she ends is nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Because the first episode starts, right, and I'm a little confused already, because it cuts to Aoi, Aoi Izumi. She's a 14-year-old girl and an activist for ending discrimination against kaijin.
Yes.
And what we learn kaijin are like these weird half-human, half-mutant creatures who can like hide their kind of monstrous forms. And we don't really know much about them in the beginning.
Right.
We see the Japanese government denying that they were created, that they like originated from Japan. So at this point in the story, when it begins, no one knows how these things got here. But they started reproducing, and then things got icky. And no one knows what's happening. Eventually, Aoi gets targeted by a couple different groups. Like, you know, they put a bounty out on her, and that's how Kotaro learns of her existence in the first place.
Let me stop you for 1 second.
Yeah.
And just say that Aoi's character, I believe, is a direct representation of Greta Thunberg.
Oh, wait a minute. Who's that again?
Greta Thunberg is the little girl who made a speech in front of the UN about like climate change and all that stuff, and how they have to get their act together. Yep. And she's like a young activist, and I was like, oh, this is that.
That makes a lot of sense.
The Aoi is like, it's very close to that, especially because this was made so recently that I was like, okay.
Well, it's crazy though, because there's a lot of activists now who are super young, especially when it comes to those advocating for trans rights, because a lot of the activists are like kids going through it.
Children. Yeah,
like you know, they're teenagers going through it. So, I didn't hit me too. It didn't smack me in the face as odd, just because I'm like, yeah, no, younger and younger people are being activists nowadays. You know, it's just something that just kind of like a reality of the world, especially as an American. I'm like, yeah, no, the 15-year-old kids making a speech in front of Congress that they're going to ignore. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but she, like as you said, was all about like the.
Ending discrimination against
kaijins, right? And a lot of people in Japan seem to be in the opposite direction. That
they're like, to fucking get them out of the country,
exterminate them, or
kill them, get them out of the country, whatever.
Nobody knows, at least like as early as the first episode or like the first
how they happened.
Nobody really knows where they came from, how they started,
and like I said, the Japanese government's denying that like they came from Japan,
right?
Which is wrong.
Which is incorrect.
Which is very, very wrong.
As I grew suspicious to find.
But anywho.
Did you say the government was lying?
In 2022? How dare you?
What? Crazy.
But again, I have to get to this point because it's why like I thought this show was going to be a laugh factory for us, because we see Gorgum, the new Gorgum, it's a political party. I'm like, okay. and they send someone after Aoi to kill her. Kotaro gets another random contract because he's basically a hoodlum bounty hunter who's just trying to shoot himself up with ketamine, and we don't really know why at first. Huh?
And he lives in an abandoned bus in the middle.
There's
of the
a lot
field.
of abandoned buses in random burnout villages
like that. Yeah,
I love stuff like that. I love the visuals in the show because they're so bizarre. So we see Aoi and her good friend Shunsuke, who is a kaijin.
Shunsuke. He's a bird kaijin. And he's like a common street bird.
That face you made also we'll talk about what happens to Shunsuke later because it got me hard.
Oh, God.
Not that it got me erect, that it hit me emotionally. I should have really prefaced that better.
I was so erect.
I was the opposite. I was very sad.
Yeah, very flaccid, very sad. Very sad for Shunsuke.
But yeah, so we see Aoi and Shunsuke just walking, and they're talking about homework, very innocent kid stuff, where Kotaro's following them, and this other dude who Gorgum sent after the two of them comes out, and in true Rider fashion, the first villain he fights is a spider. So...
okay.
So... you see this weird CGI going on with a spider, and I'm just like, there's going to be a lot of this in this series, isn't there? So glad I was wrong.
And then there wasn't.
And then him and Kotaro fought, and then I noticed, this is a lot more violent than Black ever got, because Kotaro, rips out the spider's entrails and, strangles him with him.
Yep.
I'm like,
yep.
Oh. And this is all live action, so, it oscillates from, either very goofy or gruesome.
So that is something that I wanted to hit on. That one of the big things out of this show,
right?
The big word that I use to describe this show is gross. It's fucking gross. Oh my God! There was not one episode where I didn't say ew, at least twice.
Yep.
God, they just fucking went with it. It wasn't even gory and disgusting or anything like that. It was just straight up just unpleasant to look at most of the time. The shit they did in this show was
creative, I'll say that, but
God, there were so many things the putting when they create how they create kaijins is that they put a stone,
these magical fucking not magical, but they engineer these stones with weird properties and the DNA of certain other creatures. And they basically just cut you open, and they put it in this little pouch in your stomach somewhere. Yeah. And they don't knock people out while they do this, so they're writhing in pain.
Thoroughly awake during the whole process.
We see a child, Kotaro and Nobiko, go through this in the first episode.
Yes.
And it's reminiscent of the first scene one of the first scenes in Black when it's both of them going, Kotaro, Nobiko. But they're older teens, so it's not as disturbing. Here they are young kids, probably 7 or 8. And they're getting the stones put in them, so they become Black Sun and Shadow Moon. And I'm like, ew.
It's fucking disgusting. There are some skipping ahead to just slightly a bit, but obviously spoilers. But
we can skip it as much as we want. I just wanted the only reason I harp so much on the first episode is to give context as why I thought this show would have been a funny watch, and that's not what it was.
Great idea. And it wasn't. It was not funny. And then at one point, when Aoi gets turned into a kaijin, which was fucking stupid, by the way. That whole sequence was so dumb, and what happened afterwards. But all right, there were a lot of dumb shit in this show that I gotta deconstruct. But that was one thing.
I loved Aoi getting transferred into a kaijin, especially her and Shunsuke.
Oh, I thought remember that interaction was good, but I thought the it just didn't the characters in that scene, the doctor that had to do it to her was didn't want to do it, but then that other character who made him do it,
Bogenya,
Bogenya, he's fucking weird. Hated his character. He didn't do anything. He was just such a little bitch. He was in service to everybody at any period of time, including Aoi, the person that he turned into a kaijin, for kind of no reason. Well, no, he just made no sense to me as a character the entire show.
This is one of the problems with the show, because the word you used was gross. Mine relates to the narrative, and it's dense.
Dense. It is very dense. Yes.
Luckily, I didn't drink during this show, because if I did, I'd be so lost. Yeah. I would have been. It was
tough at times. It was tough, but I think back to what I was saying before, the doctor puts the stone in her and she becomes a kaijin. heals up right away first thing. Like the stomach just kind of heals up, I guess, when you turn into a kaijin.
Well, but the kaijins do have weird healing properties, so that
they do.
You know.
So it tracks. Yeah. But that doctor like becomes her best friend after a while, and I'm like, it just there's so many weird characters in here that I was like, what is this layering with these characters, and like who actually are they?
Well, because like there were so many layers that were constantly getting constructed then deconstructed is the problem. Motivations here changed wildly in terms of like, but they followed the plot line, but you had to listen, unfortunately.
Yeah, no. I got the plot, like I got everything about it. It was just a lot to take in, dense, as you said. It was very dense
because in the 10 episodes we had here, and the episode lengths, like the shortest was probably 37 minutes, and the longest I think was 53 minutes.
Yeah,
so like in between, average of 45 minutes an episode, let's say.
Yeah, I would say so.
They crammed a lot of plot in there, especially because they had two plots going on, where it was the present day plot, and then it would cut back to the 70s, and then the 70s plot kept progressing forward in time until we got back to the present day.
Yeah.
That became hard to follow, because...
It did become hard to follow. I gotta say that I did like the 1970s plot. I think it was...
Really?
Like, I enjoyed that part. I think at a certain point it got really muddled towards the end. Like the 70s plot had just got really just stupid and overblown. But the beginning of it I was like, cool. Like we're seeing some origin stories of Gorgram and all that stuff. And, you know, like Kotaro and Nobiko obviously both have feelings for this one girl who's clearly Yukari, who's completely really controlling them essentially. Yeah. As like a freedom fighter for the kaijin. So I think the whole part of that 1970s... also, we got Oliver Johnson, who's the fucking man. Come on.
Oliver Johnson.
Oliver Johnson.
Because I think someone in the meeting said, what if they all had a black friend? And they found an actor who spoke very good Japanese, and they're like, come on, Oliver Johnson. He's like, okay.
My favorite characters were the gaijin in the show. The Oliver Johnson and
his son Nick. Yeah.
And Nick. Fucking Nick.
I loved Nick because I didn't think he would have such an impact at the very end of the show when
he did.
When him and Kuromi found the prime minister
and killed him, which was so funny. My favorite thing at the end of that, after they brutally just destroyed this man.
Oh, Oliver Johnson, never forget.
Never forget Oliver Johnson.
He just screamed the name of his dad after he murdered the prime minister of Japan. Who was the biggest villain in the show as the prime minister.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he was pulling all the strings, making the kaijins, and
and what he was doing, which is amazing to me, because again, I mentioned how the allegory got dropped very quickly. We learned that the government knows about the kaijins because they created them.
Yeah, they just made them.
Originally for weapons of war.
Right.
But one of the main reasons they're being kept around is the fucking prime minister's like, well, we can, we need human flesh to create their food. So how about we just round up all, like, the poor, elderly, and gay people and just, like, turn them into monster food?
Yep.
And that's what they did.
That's what they did.
And it was glossed over a little bit in the second episode. I'm like, can we run that back?
I was like, excuse me? They expanded on it later, but...
They did, yeah, but still...
But yeah, they make like, and the substance is called heaven, which is once again this fucking gross, like blue jelly, a lot of like gross liquids throughout this entire, like, oh god, like the blue liquid from the Creation King. I was like, ew, it's coming out of his like, it's coming out of his grundle, like it's disgusting. They did so many things in this show that I was like, I would hate. There would be no job that I would hate more in this world than to be the prop master for this fucking show. Really? And having to make all of these goops and goos and all that. Just like, goops and goos. Disgusting. Just gross. I was just saying ew to myself all the time.
Did you also happen to watch this one on a plane?
I did watch it on a plane, so maybe that didn't help. The nausea did not help.
Oh my god, that's so funny. I would love if someone like looked at your screen like, what the fuck is he watching?
It was definitely, I was like, oh man, I hope nobody sees this fight between a grasshopper and a whale on my screen.
Oh, the little whale guy, he was so fucking...
He was so weird.
That's the thing, you got a lot of weird kaijin in here. Because, you know, there was a couple of kaijin kids running around because what happened was after the government made them, they started like reproducing. So things got out of hand, and the government's like, oh fuck, what do we do? But yeah, no, they're selling some of them off to other governments. They're a tool.
Yeah, there was also a part where I remember in one of the first episodes where they had like a kaijin in a cage, and they were like selling them to the highest
auction,
bidder and stuff, like auctions and stuff. So yeah, they've created quite a business for themselves in like selling off these kaijin around.
Yeah, and like I remember that same episode, someone like the prime minister was in like a parliament meeting, and then they pass him a note saying like how much a certain kaijin sold for, and the prime minister's like, good. And it's like, oh my god, he's controlling everything.
Damn, this guy.
And we very quickly learn why he does not like the Gaijins, because when he was younger, he got kidnapped by a group of them.
Wait a minute, he did? What was that? Oh man, you gotta jog my memory.
He was the kid that they kidnapped. He was the prime minister's grandson, who later became prime minister himself.
Oh, he was that guy?
Yes.
Oh. That makes a lot of sense. I don't know why I didn't make that connection. It's so obvious. Because he is like, in like following episodes, he is like the grandson of the guy that did all this shit. So it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. We learned why he personally hates the kaijin. But yeah, because it was in the 70s, which ties into this show, what I think this show's message is trying to be, which is one that I've never seen before. If this is the correct message here's the message that I gleaned from it, but I'll get into it later. But to get to the plot for a little bit, in the 70s, what happened is, Kotaro and Nobiko, they join the kaijin, like, kind of resistance group. They're like, well, we got these weird-ass powers. We're both bugs.
Yeah.
We should fight, unite with other kaijins to fight for our equality. So they meet a couple of kaijin, mainly Dorum, Bisham, Bilgania, and the little person, whose name I'm forgetting. Mm-hmm. And once I saw the little person, I'm like, and the woman and the guy, I'm like, oh, these are the three, like, wizards from the original.
Wow. Nice.
I saw
Good
that.
Work.
Like, uh-oh. And then they wore the robes. And I'm like, okay, that's actually just them.
Yep, that's them.
The leaders of Gorgum from the original, they're wearing black instead of white. But,
I see.
It all just kind of clicked for me. And I completely forgot that Bilgania was also a character in the original.
Dude just could not make any sense the entire show to me.
Well, because here's the thing. Like, he kept turning coat. He was like Big Show.
He big showed.
Throughout the entire thing, because this ties into what happens. So they kidnap the prime minister's grandson. Prime minister isn't thrilled. Tries to send people to kill him, etc. They get into some fights here and there, some interesting stuff. Then they just kind of they take a meeting with the prime minister at one point, and he's like, "All right, give me my grandson back. We're gonna make you guys a political party. On paper, you'll have all the same rights as humans." But when time comes, I need you guys to do a lot of shit for me. And Dorum, the leader of Gorgum, is like, oh, fuck. We're concessing a lot. We're giving a lot of concessions here, but we can guarantee our species' survival. And that's the first time Bilgania is like, what are you doing? Just kill him right now.
Yeah. And then Bilgania, like, joins the prime minister, though?
Later on, he joins the prime minister, because Bilgania, and this is basically a religious zealot who legitimately believes the Creation King is God.
Yes, I remember this. Yeah,
and just so people can have a context, we see the Creation King. Why he's called that is, in order to make new kaijins, you need the goo that comes out, the blue goo that comes out of him.
The blue goo, yeah, his blue goo. You need that to make kaijins.
And the thing is, whenever a Creation King dies, you need a successor to become a new one. Kotaro and Nobiko's father accidentally made the Creation King when they were experimenting on people. They're like, oh, fuck.
Which is very funny, because they were like, well, he was like, he also said that Kotaro and Nobiko were born on the same day that the Creation King was made. And, okay, so they said the Creation King, if I'm not mistaken, what I remember hearing, the Creation King was made because they tried to turn a guy into a kaijin.
Yes.
But it was also on an eclipse with, by the same time, a locust infestation.
Yes.
So that made the Creation King.
Yes.
And because the sun was eclipsed, that's why we have Black Sun and Shadow Moon.
Yes.
And another layer is that in order to create the Creation King, or make another Creation King, you need to rub these two stones together.
Yes, the two halves of the King Stone.
Yes, the King Stone halves to create a new Creation King. So these King Stones are out there.
Yes.
Gorgram wants them
yes.
because they're, they're good to have, probably, to make another Creation King in case this one kicks the bucket. It's looking pretty old, so it's probably going to be pretty
the whole
soon.
thing is the Creation King's about to die. They need to find a new one. And here's the interesting thing, right? We learned that apparently you can take your stone out as a kaijin, and it doesn't affect you at all. You can just kind of pop it back out because it's
weird. Yeah, I that was so strange. I was like,
because the two halves of the King Stone are what they use to make Nobiko and Kotaro Black Suns. Right. The red half is the Kotaro's half, and the green one is Nobiko's.
Right.
It corresponds with their eye color that they later develop in the series, which I find very funny because it's the reverse Star Wars, where you have the green as the good guy and red as the bad guy.
It's I got the same thing. Yep.
Yeah, it's the reverse of that.
Got the same thing.
Japan has much different connotations of the color red that we do in the West.
It's true. Like on the arcade machines, red meant go.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh, well.
If you play a PS2 game in Japan, the circle button is the yes and X is no.
Ah, wow.
It's the reverse of what we have here. It's very weird.
Very weird.
Very, very, very odd. But anyway.
But yes, but they okay, so that was a big confusion point for me as well.
Really?
So these stones are out there.
Yes.
But Nobiko and Kotaro the stones were put into them.
Yes. But at one point taken out.
When did they get taken out? Who did that?
They gave them to Yukari at one point.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they gave them to Yukari. She's like, I'll keep them safe. And they're like, we trust you for reasons.
And then after that, here's the reason. Hot. She's hot.
Primal. They were thinking with their Oliver Johnsons.
Yes, they were. Oliver Johnson. Never forget Oliver Johnson. But okay. Another the glaring part to me was like, okay, so Aoi,
yes,
by some way, like we see flashbacks to Oliver Johnson, and like Oliver Johnson like has the King Stones and he gives one to Aoi's parents, who then in turn give it to Aoi. She wears as a necklace. And the government's like looking for them. Obviously, like the prime minister wants them, but prime minister's old when they're looking for them, right? He's at his age that he basically is at the showtime. So what the fuck were they doing for the last 50 years, bro? Like these stones have been out there. Why haven't they been looking for them? They just like they took them 50 years to find that Oliver Johnson had a stone.
That's what we're led to believe, apparently. Yeah.
And then now they know that Aoi has a stone. They just find it. Like that seemed like a little ridiculous to me. I was like, "What have you been doing?" Like Kotaro's been aging. He hasn't been doing much. Nobiko's been in your prison.
Kotaro's been smacking drugs into his system, trying to like lessen all the pain because he refuses to drink heaven for a long time.
Yes,
because it's grounded up human. So we see his moral compass there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nobiko's just been in a prison cell, and they're hoping he'll tattle and say where the Kingstones are. He legitimately doesn't even know at this point.
Yeah.
And the only reason Kotaro doesn't actually finish the job and kill Aoi to get like the money for it is he sees the Kingstone around her neck and is like, where the fuck did you get my Kingstone?
Yeah.
And so that's how their kind of relationship starts to form. We soon learn that Aoi's parents were been on the run for a while because obviously, trying to prevent Gorgram from getting the new creation stone. So they've been on the run, so Aoi's never really had that father figure in her life. She's been looked after this caretaker lady who gets brutally murdered in like the second or third episode. Oh, yeah,
by Poison Ivy. I mean, whoever that Vine woman was.
Yeah, she was fun for the episode we have with her.
She also looked gross. God, that face. Oh, my God. Burned into my nightmares.
Well, that's the thing. Even when the show didn't have to be gross, it went gross.
It just did. It just did. All the time. I'm like, who decided that every episode needs to just be like, ooh.
Oh, I felt so bad for Shinsuke in episode 2 where you thought they killed him because she stepped on his head and like one of his eyes popped out heavy.
Yeah, he gets like curb stomped. Yeah.
But then Nobiko shows up and just just shovels heaven into his mouth and he's fine because he wasn't dead yet. He was like near dead. So we learned what a fucking OP thing heaven is.
Yeah, it can revive you. It could do really well for you. And like Nobiko, while he was in prison at Gorgram, was being fed heaven daily. So
just enough heaven to keep him alive.
So he's just been living, and he hasn't aged at all. Like when he gets out, which is why we have like hot young stud Nobiko and like old daddy Kotaro.
Exactly, which I kind of like surprisingly love that dynamic between the two of them.
I liked it. Yeah, I really did like it. Like because Kotaro's just been out here living life, and like Nobiko's just like coming back, trying to find grips with reality. And eventually,
Nobiko's motivations change hardcore, which I
liked.
I did. Nobiko's journey was fucking insane.
It was cool. I liked his backstory and journey. Yeah.
Once he realized what the hell kaijins were and everything like that, all he wanted to do was originally kill the Creation King. Mm-hmm. That way, there'd be no more kaijins made. That the people, living their lives would, kaijins would live normal lives until they died. But he was hopeful that we'd stop making more kaijins. However, it's kind of it reminded me a little bit of some scenes of Devilman Crybaby, especially when Nobiko just sees all the hate that humans have for kaijin and how, humans are the real demons all along type thing.
Right.
Nobiko changes his tune a little bit. Mm-hmm. And what happens with that is he starts forming like this little army of kaijin. Yeah. And because he sees like all these riots going on and people getting like beaten and shot by cops. And he's like, fuck this. We should not be peaceful. We should be pissed. We should be angrier. Who is going to follow me? So he makes this group of all like the young kaijins.
Including Shunsuke.
They bomb a building.
Mm-hmm. They kind of become a terrorist group, like an extremist, like fringe terrorist group, essentially.
And so what they do is they try to free all the people that they have caged up they make heaven out of. So that was their original goal. They wanted to free all the people they make heaven out of, but then the cops show up and just gun almost all of them down.
They just all die, right after they get let out, essentially.
Oh, and fucking we'll talk about it now. When Shinsuke died, it was so fucking sad.
Yeah, that was really sad.
What happened is he escaped. He made it through, but earlier in the season, as in his bird form, he pooped on one of the lead like hate speech mongers we've seen throughout the series so far.
That was really funny. I enjoyed that part.
That scene was great, but then like they cornered him in an alley and just killed him, and he's screaming for help, but all the humans just keep walking by. They're like, oh, they're just beating up a kaijin. We don't care. Mm-hmm. They show one great shot, like it's an overhead shot of a guy leaving the bathroom they're next to, like an outside, like a porta potty type thing, or like an outside bathroom. He looks at it, just walks away.
Yep.
I found that little touch of detail so powerful. Mm-hmm. At that point, Nobiko loses it because they hung his dead body above like his parents' little kind of hovel because his parents live in this kind of slum area. Yeah, that's kind of reminiscent of like the fucking the kids' home from Cyberpunk. Mm-hmm. That little little alley, so. Which I love that setting.
Yeah, the imagery was good.
He was hanging there, his dead body, and like with a sign around his neck saying, "This is what happens to kaijin," and Nobiko loses it. He just runs up. He literally grabs the late hate monger's head and squishes him to death in a scene I love because his head exploded.
It was great. There weren't many scenes. I will say there weren't many scenes in this show that actually made me feel something because I do have that continuous disconnect with like the costumes and stuff. Yeah. I just think they look so silly, so I can just never really get into it. Because I'm just never like I can't buy into it. It's just not like it just doesn't do it for me.
I gotcha.
That scene of Shunsuke's death, like even though he does look like a dumb street bird, when I saw it, I was like, oh man, that's really sad actually. So
there was a lot of moments. Yeah,
that did get me at that point.
There were a lot of moments for me where I felt it. Particularly when they turned Aoi into a kaijin, you see them cutting her open and she's just screaming.
Yeah, that was kind of. I was like, well, mostly I was like, ew, but
no. For me, I was like, oh my god, this is brutal. And then she loses control a little bit. There's the great fight scene between her and Kotaro when she's like full on kaijin form.
Yeah.
Then he realizes like, Aoi.
He's like, oh no.
But then that was the first hard pop I had of the series when he turns, twists his fists together and does the old school transformation pose. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I lost my shit, especially because the costumes morph from like their primal state into the more refined version that looks a lot more like the original Black. Mm-hmm. Still very different, but it looked more like Kamen Rider Black that I'm familiar with, and I was like, yo.
The transformation scenes were the coolest by far in the show. All of them, I was like, that's tits. That's awesome. Like literally anytime anybody said Henshin, I was like, thank God, this is so cool. And like anytime they did, they're like, whew, Their like little arm out and so I thought that was great. Like anytime there was a transformation, usually in like anime, I would be like, oh god, like another transformation scene. This is so overplayed. Here, it was so fun, and every time they did it, I was like, fuck yeah, so cool.
A lot of reason why I fell in love with Toku to begin with is just these epic transformation scenes. I love them, and the first one here that Kotaro did after realizing Aoi was a kaijin was great. Him and Belgania had a pretty damn good fight. And that's the thing here. I've seen some people criticize Black Sun for the actual action scenes. A lot of hardcore Toku fans, like, they were too short. I'm like, they were telling the stories. Fuck you.
Really? I thought the action scenes were quite good, actually.
Well, like, a lot of the hardcore Toku fans are just people who want fight scene. I'm like, you need context. You need to care. Mm-hmm. You need to care.
I thought some of them were... I thought they were fine in length. I thought, like, maybe the longest one was... when Bill Genia was fighting off like all those cops.
Oh, I love that.
Trying to get Aoi.
Everything about my affection for the show can be summed up in that scene where you have Bulgania and I can't remember his name. I'm gonna say Komatsu. I think it was wrong. The one cop they paint as a good guy throughout this entire season.
Yes.
Suddenly, one person you've been led to hate this entire show and one you've been led to like are fighting each other, and your hopes are flipped. Mm-hmm. You're hoping Bulgania wins because he's protecting Aoi at this point. Right. As she's doing another live stream exposing the Japanese government for making kaijin.
Yes.
And I'm like, this show is making me care a lot. And Bulgania just gets fucking wrecked by these cops.
I literally did not care about that scene at all. I will
really,
because Bill Genia just completely lost my interest in it. Because the amount of things that he has done in this show, I was like, I don't care about him anymore. He's just such like a flippity floppity character that it just didn't really matter. I was like, oh, good, like somebody's protecting Aoi, but at no point was I ever like, oh my god, Bill Genia is so valiant, like so cool. Like no, the entire time I
thought he was cool. I thought
the entire time I was just like, oh. Bill Genia is in another fight. Okay. He really lost my interest. I think like him just being such like a once again, the word dense comes up, but just such like man, I just could never keep track of him. I was like, I don't understand his motivations at any point because they changed the next episode.
Yeah, but you just had to kind of listen for what because his entire thing was the Creation King. He really believed he was God. That's why he followed, he wasn't happy about the direction Gorgum went, so that's why he followed. But he still followed him because it was for the Kaijin cause. Still he thought it was in service to Creation King. He started to sign line with the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister's next goal was to create a new Creation King. So that's why he went with the Prime Minister. With Nobiko wanting to become the next Creation King, that's why he followed him. It wasn't until they met with one of the professors, I think Nobiko's father, Professor Atsuki, where he just spelled it out. It's like, no, the Creation King is no god. It's a fuck up we made in the lab one time. Sorry. Once Bulgania realized his entire religion was a lie, that's why he wanted to protect Aoi. He's like, well, I did some terrible, terrible things because of this. People doing terrible things to religion. It's always a plot point I kind of liked because it's like, wow, I had the best of intentions, but look at all the shit I'd done. Mm-hmm. That's why I wanted to protect Aoi because, he realized, I need to atone for like a lot. And I was like, I'm not going to forgive you. You killed my mom in front of me. And the guy was like, yeah.
Yeah. He was like, I killed your mom in front of you and made you into a kaijin. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just didn't connect. He didn't connect with me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Throughout the entire... He was always like... He was always that character that I was like... like the whole idea of him being like... very, very dedicated to the Creation King. I was like, okay, that's something I can like understand. I don't know. I just didn't get his place a lot of the time. It was
I was following. I gotta say, I was following.
He kind of read henchman to me the entire time, but like that wanted to do something bigger, but never quite got to do it. I guess. I don't know.
That was good. Yeah, that's a pretty good point.
I guess
he was. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. He didn't do much for me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But the scene with also in the 70s, the wood scene, when they're in the woods and they have the Creation King in like a box or like a house. such a mess. That whole scene was such a mess. It like went over for like an episode or two, and like they have the grandson with them who's like tied to a tree.
Yep.
And like one episode, the girl, I forget her name.
Yukari?
Yeah, Yukari got the stones from Kotaro and Nobiko, and then all at the same time, like Oliver Johnson's like, "What's going on?" And then, oh man, I can't even remember his name anymore. The guy that I'm harping on continuously, Bogania, and Bogania is like, "You're not gonna try to kill the Creation King, are you?" And everybody's like, "No, absolutely not." And he's like, because that's bad. Because
I'm Bogania.
Because don't. And then they're all like, "Oh, we would never do that." Yeah. And then he sees like and then he kills their love interest.
Yep.
With a sword. Mm-hmm. And then
the Satan Saber. Excuse me.
Satan Saber. That's right.
It was a big deal in the show.
Only sword that is known to kill the Creation King completely.
Yes. Which is so funny because the legend that created around it was like, it's the sword meant to protect him. It's like, no, it's actually the thing we have that can kill him. It's like,
which is really funny. Oh, oops. I guess somebody messed up there.
A lot of tragic irony here in the show, which I love.
Yeah.
There's a couple scenes of great tragic irony.
Yeah. And that was another thing, though, the Creation King thing. Towards the end, right? When Kotaro's like, I gotta do it. I gotta kill the Creation King to like prevent like any more kaijins from being born, to be born into discrimination. And I'm like, I get it. Cool. I love that.
He wanted to spare people his fate.
Spare people his fate, exactly. Very, very fun plot device. I really enjoyed that.
Right.
And then Nobiko you have, who is like, no, us kaijins have to be the dominant species that we are, stop taking shit and kill all the humans.
Yeah.
And then you have those ideals clashing at some point. But before then, Kotaro gets to the Creation King, and he's like, I'm finally going to kill you. Because like he tried to kill him at one point, but then he fucked up Kotaro's leg.
Yeah.
But now, Creation King's a lot older, a lot weaker. So
he's hoping it'll work this time, yeah.
Kotaro's trying to kill him this time. So, but he does, basically. He kills him, essentially. Like, his heart's still out, and it's beating. Oh, gross. His heart's still out, like, and beating next to Kotaro.
Which is actually a very intelligent callback to the original show, because
is it?
In the original show, they don't reveal what's left of the Creation King till towards the end, and it's just the heart.
Oh, that's clever, then. That's fun.
Yep. It was very clever. And here's the thing.
He kills him, though.
Well, we think.
But, like, he doesn't actually.
Yeah.
Because his heart's still beating.
Exactly.
But, I mean, like, what's he gonna do?
Wait,
like, what's the creation? Like, he's not dead, but, like, he doesn't have a body anymore. Like, he's, like, what's he gonna do? Like, and so, my question, maybe you can answer it, is...
Okay.
Why did Kotaro feel the need to then become the Creation King? Because...
Oh, he didn't want to.
Well, he didn't want to, but he did.
It was an accident.
Oh, it was an accident. Okay.
He thought the Creation King was dead.
Oh, and then he put the two stones together and he became the Creation King.
And then he got enveloped by the heart and attacked by the heart.
Okay, I thought he did it intentionally because he was like, well, there's got to be a Creation King, and I guess it got
No, Bounty. The entire point of that scene was Kotaro thinking he succeeded, but he failed.
Oh.
Him going, oh, fuck, you're still alive.
Oh, that's better. Okay. That's good.
Oh, yeah, no, I love that scene. Because once I saw, like... Because in my head, I'm like, that heart's still beating. The king's still alive. And then the stones, Kotaro combined the stones accidentally. And then next thing you know, he gets eaten. Basically gets eaten by a giant heart.
Yeah.
And then he gets formed into the new Creation King against his wishes. And I was just like... Oh, no.
So that scene makes a lot more sense now, because when I was watching that, for some reason, I had thought... Because he seemed to very intentionally put those stones together. Like, it didn't seem like an accident. He was just like, let me just put these together and see what happens.
He might have put them together intentionally.
To, like, test it out, I guess, maybe?
Or just to do it, just like, unite the King Stones, because, at that point, he just fucking killed Nobiko for that point, from what I remember.
Right,
And, he basically wanted to end the conflict, but no, he very much thought he killed the Creation King. He thought he was winning, and he didn't.
Then why did he touch the two stones together, bro? Like, why did he do that?
Just to unite the stones, because I thought, like, I think the symbolism was supposed to be the conflict is over. Yeah, that's what I got. That was the read I got from it. And I'm just like, no, because I remember saying, no, Kotaro, you idiot. And then, I knew that heart was coming for him. I knew it was coming.
Okay. Because I thought that, like, he was like, oh, I basically killed the Creation King, or like, even if I didn't, like, it's just a heart. It can't do anything to me. Like, all right, I think we're good, guys. Let's just like encase the heart somewhere and just, that's it.
He needed to be more thorough. He needed to actually kill the king, but he thought he did it. At least that was my read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're correct on there. Like, I think my read was incorrect, but at the same time, it was a little confusing to like because I was like, okay, so he's now the Creation King, like, but
listen, this whole show can get very confusing.
It was a bit confusing, yeah. Generally,
no, whole show. Yeah. That's like the main folly of this show, where it is legitimately hard to follow. It's not. Yeah. It's not an Ava situation where they keep plot points vague. The plot's all there. You just gotta like, you really gotta pay attention to follow.
Really gotta like.
It's not. It's not exactly light viewing, especially with some of the nonsense we watch on this show. This one was pretty plot heavy.
Pretty heavy, yeah, pretty plot heavy, and also, I mean, at the end, right, when Kotaro is the Creation King, something I did enjoy. Was when Aoi, right, comes in and Kotaro's...
that whole ending sequence got me so bad.
It's good. Because the part that I was like, oh, that's oh, no.
Sad.
When he comes up to her and, like, grabs her from the back, like, from the neck, as he did when he was teaching her how to fight.
Yeah, because like, the whole, like, in like, very early in the season, like, I was like, you have to teach me how to fight and defend myself against all these people who are trying to kill me. So there's one very particular scene where like he has his hand around like kind of like almost sleeper hold kind of position, and he's like, "All right, you do this, this, and that to get away and to fight back." He gets up and he's like can barely move because now he's a Creation King. He's like, "Aoi, kill me, please," and he puts his arm around her neck, and we're like, "Oh no, she's gonna kill him."
Yeah, and that's like the sequence with like she like does what he taught her and like.
Yeah, but instead of a back elbow, she takes the tip of Satan's saber and stabs him in the heart with it, and he turns into dust. And all the credit to the young actress here, that scream she let out after she stabbed him was right below fucking Midori in like the ending scream in there.
Yeah,
that was a blood-curdling scream from this actress here. It was fucking brutal when she just basically had to kill the only father figure she ever had.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, emotionally, that was the one scene I'm like, oh god, that's so sad.
Yeah, it was very sad. I gotta say, her acting was quite good.
Yes.
Her like reactions to things was always like, oh, that's good. Like she like really leaned into it, I thought.
Yes.
I thought the acting generally in this was surprisingly good. Like I think like generally, I think Nobiko was my favorite character, just of like the turns that he took through the entire show.
And his turns were, even though there was a couple of them, they were easy enough to follow.
No, they made sense. They made sense.
Point A and point B
okay,
weren't obscured like other characters were.
I got it. The whole thing about him being at the head of Gorgrum after being in prison at Gorgrum for so long was like very interesting, and like that whole dynamic, and like how like Bishum is just kind of like
stabbed Dorm in the back,
first lady in charge. Like she just always is like on top anywhere she goes, which is interesting dynamic. Her kaijin, disgusting. Whatever that like bat bird thing was.
Pterodactyl.
Oh my god, it looked like a naked mole rat with teeth. Like disgusting, absolutely gross. Oh god, the prop master on this, whoever it is, like, hey, you did a great job, but ew.
I mean, a great job considering the budget they must have had for this not being tremendously high, but they really did they pulled no punches. Like I said, very little CGI, which for me was a huge bonus. I love seeing more practically based effects because they're becoming more and more rare in an age where computers are so readily available. So I love that. I will say one thing I forgot to mention was because I talked about how Kotaro had the second form where he got closer to the original costume. I loved with Nobiko after he squished the mob leader's head and is now fully invested in killing off all the humans and making the world for kaijin. That's when like the smoke clears and you see the green eyes light up and it's like, there's Shadow Moon. He's there.
It's pretty cool.
But again, the show not needing to be gross, but it was gross when they made the swords out of like the back tendril things.
Dude, they literally had to rip out their own like arm,
exoskeleton,
their own like what is it called, like in I don't know, like their own little like grasshopper arm. They had to like rip it off to form a sword. I was like, you didn't okay.
Well, what I loved was they each did it once in the series, and it never grew back. It just doesn't grow back.
Yeah, which is crazy.
And then in the final battle, they rip off each other's, and then fight, and then somehow, though, during the fight scene, like their respective swords get back in their hands. I'm like, that attention to detail wasn't needed, but I'm so glad I got it.
It was nice. I also like the fan service that we were talking about over text in the final episode of the intro.
Well, that's the thing. This show was super light on the Rider fan service. It was really light until episode 10 starts and they recreated the original theme.
It's awesome.
Like the original intro. Oh my God, it was so fucking cool.
Cool.
Once I saw Kotaro, the current Kotaro, walk through the door, I'm like, dun, dun,
talk about
dun.
something that
So
like
happy.
Even to a person who has very
little
minimal
experience
connection with the original series, I was like, yo, that's cool. Even me. And then when he Rider kicked him and Rider punched him, I was like, that's cool.
Oh, the Rider kick. When he hit that first kick, I was losing my mind. Because that was the only one he did throughout the entire show.
Yep, it was.
He saved it for the finish.
Every other one was like a straight up fight. Like it was just like a regular fight. And this one, he just like used the moves, played the hits, and I was like, nice. That was
because every other fight, he was like ripping someone's head or arm off or something in a grotesque manner. And this is the only time it wasn't so grotesque.
True. Oh, something that was grotesque. Oh my God. In the fight between Nobiko and Kotaro, when Nobiko like impales Kotaro
on the
door with a sword, and Kotaro, instead of pulling out the sword because he can't pull it out, he just walks through it, leaving a gaping hole in his body. And I was like, oh, so badass, but also gross.
Well, you had a great word about there, because they painted Kotaro in this one as a grizzled badass.
They did. They really did. They gave him that, like, he had that like Clint Eastwood kind of grit to him for some reason. I got throughout. I was like, I like Kotaro. He's like an older dude. He's like, I don't got time for this shit. I'm too old for this shit kind of attitude. But he's just still bangs, dude.
His story arc there is very interesting because he basically spent 50 years doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the message I got with him is it's never too late to take action and make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone talked about fulfilling wishes of others at one point during the show, like I'm carrying on the so-and-shows, like the prime minister's wish, I'm carrying on my mom's wish, etc. He said something kind of powerful to me. He's like, I'm carrying on a wish too, the wish of my younger self. He's always behind me watching. So, I got a very be true to yourself kind of vibe off him.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I just love that mentality of like, even when things are their darkest and you've done, and there's no excuse to never like do anything. You can always fight. You can always do something. You can always prevail. And that was such a good message.
And props, because it wasn't cheesy.
No, very easily. I know it's cheesy in nature, but it could have very, very easily been. But in the context of the show, it wasn't
cheesy as fuck. But if you watch the show, not that cheesy. It's very like actually. Oh, I'd see why he would say this in this situation. It's not like very preachy or anything. It's very well done in that respect.
Well, that's the thing. Like he never extrapolates his values. He never just starts barking his own values. He just says what he feels about himself, and he never gives anyone any directive of how they should feel about anything, which I've always loved. Because I've always found it so overwrought when people said, I thought this, you should think the same way.
Right.
It's just, I don't know, something about that always rubbed me the wrong way, since people are so different from in person to person. Life experiences paint people in completely different ways. We're all snowflakes, you see.
That's what we are.
Well, it's funny because I always quote Lewis Black when I say that, but now that term has so much negative connotation.
Oh my God, so much.
The fact I said that, I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. I mean that we're all truly individualistic and unique at the end of the day. As much as we want to try to fall into groups, we're our own people, and it's hard. But anyway, speaking of own people, Aoi, because how her journey goes, and what I think one of the messages of the show is, fucking almost disturbed me, but in a way I didn't mind.
Okay.
Because it seems like the message with Aoi is activism can only get you so far. Sometimes you have to fight hate with more hate. Because that's what happened with her. She started the show as a peaceful activist saying, hey, don't treat kaijin bad. But I love what they did when they made her a kaijin here. Because for the first 2 or 3 episodes she was a kaijin, she was distraught. And really didn't want to admit she was a kaijin. Shunsuke called her out immediately, and he was like, bitch, you said it doesn't matter.
Yeah, he was like, you've been preaching equality for kaijins all this time, and you you said that kaijins are people too, and you don't want to accept that you're a kaijin.
What the fuck?
It was pretty cool, actually. I was like, yeah, Shunsuke, tell her.
I love calling out the hypocrisy there.
Yes.
You know, it's a very brave thing to do, call her hypocrisy like that. I don't know if they're trying to make a grand message out of it or anything, but I loved exposing the hypocrisy in the individual character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's also a kid, so we can lay off her a little bit. But
yeah, right, sure, exactly.
But I love that. And then like her speech to the UN was, you know, her second one. She's like, "Why aren't you furious? Why aren't you angrier? The time for peaceful protest is done." And then when the show ends, we see a little girl getting like, you know, stepped on as she's trying to protest some racist picketers who are now, they moved on from kaijin just to foreigners again.
Yeah, which is, I'm like, oh, that's Japan. Yeah.
Exactly. Aoi just picks her up and brings her to her little resistance camp. And I love how the flag is the symbol she painted on Black's chest.
Yes, which is the
original symbol that was there.
Of Gorgrom. Yeah, the original symbol of Gorgrom, right?
Yep, exactly. So she just drew the little... Well, it's a slightly altered version for Black.
Right.
Because that's the version Black had on his chest during the original show. And I love how they waited until like episode 10 to put it on his chest. It's amazing fan service. But yeah, I always went through Revelations like, yeah, I have to fight hate with hate. She's literally having them build bombs.
Yep.
So...
She's literally at the helm, once again, kind of like...
A terrorist
what Nobiko did, like... Yes. Yeah, what Nobiko did, like an extremist terrorist group that just like... Yeah. Does things, and
but they're legitimately fighting for peace against those who have been stepped on and discriminated. It feels like Black Panthers, like the original Black Panthers
Very
in like
much.
the 60s and 70s, and I'm like, holy crap!
Yeah, it's like fighting for peace with war. You know,
exactly.
It's like, it was very interesting.
It's meeting violence head on with violence, and the message of the show kind of felt like, yeah, sometimes you got to do it, folks. You just got to fight fire with fire. I'm like, if that's the message. What a fucking message to choose to have in your show. Because then again, how hypocritical would it be for this show to be so bloody and disgusting and violent and go, yeah, but you don't need violence. It's like, you spent 10 episodes showing us nothing but violence.
You did so much. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the ending, I think it was pretty satisfactory. I think that it's just like, man, everybody she knows just kind of died. It's really
Everyone
sad.
She cares about is dead.
Yeah, and then now she has like that doctor that turned her into a kaijin, and then like that other guy who I think is the whale guy.
Whale guy's there, yeah.
Yeah, so she's got like a nice crew, and like they have an outpost and stuff, and they're fighting for justice. So I don't know. To what you said earlier when we first started, given the ending, given what happens throughout, she is the main character, really.
Yes.
She's like what everything is centered around. She's the story. Right. Either she's getting kidnapped, people want to have her, people want her Kingstone. She turns into a kaijin. That's a big plot point. So she's kind of driving the plot in a lot of ways, and I think she drives Kotaro to like actually do something.
Right. She was the impetus for him to actually get off his ass after 50 years of wallowing.
So yeah. I mean... So, like, what'd you think? We talked earlier.
Yes.
And you were saying that you were reading reviews that very split in the community, apparently.
Oh, horribly split. I really think the people I saw that were the hardest on the show were actually the hardcore Toku fans. Because I don't think they know what they want. And I'm coming out and speaking as one, like, it's very hard to make a gritty, reality-based version of any of these shows. They're supposed to be ridiculous entertainment for children, so we all need to settle down as a community on that front. Some people are calling it a masterpiece, I think, because it was just so much more drama-oriented than they expected. I've heard some criticisms say it's a J-drama with some Kamen Rider shit thrown in, which is a fair comparison.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I thought that a few times, actually.
No, it makes sense. You know, they went a more conventional, dramatic route with it. They went a more adult route. You know, because remember, let's not forget this is the 35th anniversary of Black, and the 50th anniversary of Rider itself. And Rider in itself is a very simplistic good versus evil type of show. They tried something new here. But a lot of people, I don't know what they wanted. You know what I mean? Because once you hear a dark remake or like a more adult oriented remake of a show, you're going to get more adult somehow, you know? Sure. And, this one they chose more relevant societal issues and to up the violence. That's how they did it, If you can't handle it, then why are you asking for adult-oriented remakes of all these shows?
Because that's what you're going to get 9 times out of 10.
You're going to get more adult content in a more adult adaptation, you silly Marys.
And did you think they did a good job? Did you like it, I guess, is maybe what I'm trying to say. Did you think it was bad at the end of the day?
This is probably my favorite thing we've watched on the show in a very long time.
Wow, really?
I love this fucking thing.
Interesting.
It is not without faults, obviously. Frankly, some of the 70s stuff kind of bored me a little bit because it got so muddy towards the middle.
It did.
I was like, what? And especially when a show is structured like this is actually one of these pitfalls. If you have 2 settings and one of them is a little less interesting than the first, that's natural. Because you're like, oh god, get back to the part that I like more, please. That's a natural audience reaction, no matter what the show would be, if it has 2 different settings like that.
Sure.
It's like in Thrones, when they would go from like Westeros to Essos. You're like, oh god.
You're like, oh, I don't want to watch this. Yeah, please.
Get back to the part I like, damn it. Yeah. That's just a very crude example, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
When you're focusing on different iterations of characters or different characters entirely. But no, I loved Aoi, Nobiko, and Kotaro's journey here. I really did. I just love this core cast of characters. I thought there was some very emotional scenes. The scene where Aoi, for example, we didn't even touch on, was waiting for her parents. They called her like, hey, we're coming back to Japan. And then they get kidnapped. And she's just sitting.
They did that twice. They literally told Aoi, I'm like, how gullible is this girl? They were like, oh, it's your mom and dad, we're coming back. And she's like, okay, I'll meet you. Yep. Fine. First time you got me. First time, okay. Second time, a guy comes up and he's like, I'm your dad. And she's like, Dad! And she's like, why didn't you meet me when you said you would? And I was like, you don't know that was a setup still? That was like 4 episodes ago. You should know this.
Nothing happened the first time around. Just Kotaro picked her up and said, yeah, your parents are dorks. We're leaving.
Yeah.
She's like, okay.
Yeah.
No, that. So I loved that original scene with that. And the second one, remember, she's a 14-year-old girl missing her parents,
True.
And she's going through all this. She's going to want her parents there. That's a very natural human reaction. So that didn't faze me as much. I knew, of course, once we saw the eyes rolling around in the dad's head, I'm like, okay, that is either.
I knew the second the dad appeared. I was like, he's gonna kill her. He's gonna try to kill her.
He's gonna try to kill her. Yeah.
I mean, like, obvious, right? But But
no,
whatever.
It was obvious, but I just loved the first scene of that. I loved a lot of the very human moments we had here. Really did. And the fight scenes, I gotta say, I really enjoyed most of them. I don't have that same disconnect with you when it comes to like the outfits. Just because it actually helps my immersion a little more because I know there's real human beings in there doing all this shit. Knowing that there's people actually involved instead of a drawing, for example.
Sure.
Especially nowadays in modern live action stuff, when all the action CGI, that completely takes me out. Because I think that's the worst of both worlds. Because don't pretend something's real life when it's clearly not. Because if I wanted that, I can go back to anime and just watch the cartoons, actual cartoons do it.
Yeah,
not
and
fucking
do it
CGI.
And do it a lot better, usually.
Most of the time, a lot better, and an art style I admire a lot more as well. So, but really the story we got here was dark, gruesome, brooding, nihilistic, but there's still a sense of fun, which
is
a little bit.
Yeah, they still managed to inject some fun into this every once in a while.
Because it's still superhero bug people running around.
It's still Kamen Rider, right? It's still like, at the end of the day, it's still like a Kamen Rider. And like, you're still going to get your transformations and stuff. And
no, yeah, you got all the
He's got the bike, He's got the bike.
You see Battle Hopper right there. And, I really fucking enjoyed this. Also, it just was so far from what I was expecting. I was expecting something a lot more simplistic and dumb. Sure, some parts of it were a little over thought out. I'm not gonna say under thought, but over thought out, with all like the characters having these grand personality changes and plot turns. So it was a little confusing. Don't get me wrong. Is this for everyone? No, because like you said, it is just so inherently gross. I could see fans of J horror not being too taken back by the gore.
Yeah, so I honestly saw this kind of in a bit of a J horror category, to be honest.
Yeah, no, so what we got here was a lot of mix of J-drama, J-horror, tokusatsu, and like some of like the anime tropes that a couple of the anime stuff that we've seen in other shows we covered. I was expecting it to rip off Devilman a lot more than it actually did. Honestly, at most, there's some visual similarities with their various Devilman adaptations when they reached into the racism stuff. With Devilman, it's been around since the 70s, just like Rider has, so take what you want. No, this is one of my favorite things we watched in a while. I thought a lot after it ended, with the whole, just that cynicism. It's like, yeah, get off your ass and start fighting. I'm like, okay, show. Thank you. It just, yes. It basically said confrontation's a good thing. And us being from a generation now that's notorious anti-confrontation, fuck, dude. That just made me think a little bit. Yeah, no, this isn't for everyone. Would I recommend it? I would say, I'd have to sit down with someone for 5 minutes before I knew if they were ready for it.
And then give them enough context, and then be like, okay.
Yeah, but no, it's not perfect. It's obtuse to follow some of the times. It's gross. Yeah. But I enjoyed it a lot. Yes, it did. Some parts for me dragged, but I was so invested in the characters and like this situation story that it pulled me through.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
All right, that's great. Well, I'm happy you liked it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was okay. Yeah. From me, I didn't really like it that much. I think like it was just so. Having like little familiarity with the genre and having little familiarity with the original series, there wasn't really that angle that I could, with your eyes, I feel like it was so much easier to be like, oh, like this is like the infinity sign thing. And like, I feel like things like that would make me like it a lot more if I had that initial context of like, oh, like there's a few things in here that they've taken from the old series and are reapplying outside of the intro and like the rider kicks and stuff because hey-oh.
Yeah, no, all that kind of stuff with salt and pepper though was didn't really add much because that didn't all come to like episode like 10.
Yeah, it came late.
It came so late, but my opinion of the show was already well set before then.
I think like if we weren't watching it for the show, I probably would have given up around episode 3 or 4. Okay. I think like there was just so much like dense elements of this that like there were like so many plot lines going on at the same time. You think that I would love that, but like I don't know, it just got to a point where I was like, there's just so much here that I just have ceased to care anymore. There were a lot of moments where. Yeah, a little overwhelming. There were some moments that I was like, oh, this is a nice scene. Or like, I like this part. Or I like, Kotaro's a fucking champ and a badass. I love it. And I love Nobuko's character arc, as I said. I think Aoi has a very strong character arc as well. Like, outside of those 3 characters, I didn't find much that I exactly liked. I thought the Shunsuke stuff was compelling as well at the end. Yeah, other than that, like, I don't know. It kind of took a lot for me to sit through the episodes. I was like, okay, here we go again. Here we go again. Here we go again. And like, I'm very happy that you liked it. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there that really enjoyed it, but I think I'm on the other side of the fence on this one. Now, to say that I think it's bad is incorrect. I do not think it's bad. Like, I don't think it was like abysmally horrible and like has no value. It does have value. And I thought it delivered on a couple things very nicely. But just in total, like the whole package was just not, it wasn't really digestible enough to like be a great story. Like, it was to me like a fine story. But if they maybe cut out a lot of the extraneous bullshit and just focused on a few core things, it would have been fantastic.
Okay, I can understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I guess maybe for me, this is also my habit of when things are like a little extemporaneous, I'm just kind of like, whatever. And also, I think it's funny because one of my favorite shows of all time is Ava, and I've also said, the first 10 episodes are kind of meh.
Yeah, they are meh. Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. I'm also realizing more and more that some shows just aren't perfect in general. Sure. And especially with my attention span, the way it's getting, almost every show now it takes a lot for me to get through because. And this is actually why I've quit TikTok and everything like that, just because it's destroying my attention span.
Oh, it destroys your brain. It's like it ruins your attention span.
Yeah, and so no, but I completely get what you're saying. I love the point you made there with it being digestible because it is not easily digest. You have to sit with it and actually you have to pay a lot of attention to what's going on.
And as we went over, like I watched this whole thing in succession, like on a plane, and like there's nothing else to distract me. Like I'm just zeroed in, and even I missed a couple things. Like there are a couple things that skated past me that I was like, why did he do this? Why did he do that? I didn't really understand the connection. So, I mean, you really gotta really really look at it, really listen to it. Yeah. I mean, just overall, my star point throughout this entire thing was that not bad, just gross, and also never forget Oliver Johnson.
It's bad.
Wow, oh my god, what a rousing podcast of anime conversation. Am I right, my compares? Am I right, my weebdom? Anywho, yeah, you can send us a message if you want. Did you like this podcast? Did you hate this podcast? Do you want to kill me? Do you want to drench me in Calaxosaur blood and watch me drink it? That's fine. Just send us an email at badanimepod@gmail.com or DM us on our Instagram at badanimepod, all one word. You can also find us on YouTube as Bad Anime, and you could leave a comment on whatever video you want to leave a comment on. We'll read them all anyways. We don't care. I love you. Kiss, kiss.
Simple Equations Podcast Network.